international community have largely ignored the atrocities and genocide that is going on in my home country of South Africa. As economic refugees living abroad, we as independent media fight to expose the truth and find solutions for the many suffering and impoverished people still stuck in South Africa. This is Stop South African Genocide, hosted by Mel V and Karin Smith, live on CCN. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to you wherever you are on this fair planet. My name is Mel V and this is Stop South African Genocide Season 2. And of course I'm joined with my wonderful colleague, partner in crime and journalistic co-host Karin Smith. Hey Karin.
Hi Mel, it's great to be back on air.
Yeah, it's been far too long. We kind of took a year out to sort through a lot of things. There was a lot of things going on in the background, involvements in various projects. And I guess with the start of a new season of Stop South African Genocide, which I suppose couldn't come at a more precise time considering what's going on, we get to discuss what has been going on in our absence as a duo on the show, and also talk about what is happening now in South Africa, and just unpack this bag a little, give a little bit of perspective and level-headedness without all the frenzy, the hype, the drama, and all the ego that seems to be fluffing out of this madness.
No, it's actually driving me crazy at the moment, the egos that are coming out, because as far as I'm concerned, the situation in South Africa has never been more tense or more critical after 1994 than it is now. Prior to the 1994 elections, there were thousands of black-on-black murders, the two political parties fighting for power. At this stage, things are really bad, and not just for white people. I see that unemployment in South Africa is reaching almost 60%. That is mainly young black people. So I can understand the despondency and the anger, but the fact that the anger is directed at whites, I do not understand. I understand the anger, but they're not directing it at the ANC where it belongs. They are still directing it at this pitifully small remnant of white people in South Africa. So it is, as you said, the right moment for us to come back and talk about what is going on in South Africa. Now, last season, we tried our best to find hope for white South Africans. And it seems the consensus amongst themselves and amongst American show hosts that there actually is no answer to this problem. The whites in South Africa cannot join hands and work together because I'm a Boer, you're an Afrikaner, you're English, whatever, and they can't join hands. So somebody will start a movement that looks very promising, and in come four other groups, and they're arguing about a full stop or a comma or an inverted comma in the person's manifesto, and for that reason, we can't join hands with you, and we're going to do it ourselves. Now, Mel, if you look at South Africa, in the census that I last think was done in about the early 2000s was the census that everybody's working their figures on. And at that census, they said there were 4.5 million white people in South Africa. Now, everybody is still quoting that figure. But if you look at government figures, more than 1 million whites have left since 2000. So, don't tell me that remnant are breeding at such a rate that we've replaced those million that have left. So if there are even 3.5 million whites in South Africa, it will be a huge shock to my system. I don't believe it for 1 minute. So, from 4.5 to 3.5 to possibly 3 million against 70 odd million, plus the hordes pouring across the borders from Zimbabwe, and also Mozambique, but mainly Zimbabwe right now. What does the white person in South Africa think their chances are if we form little cliques and stick with our little clique do not join hands, do not work together, do not find a solution together, how can the few voices outside of South Africa trying to help, genuinely trying to help them, how can those people do anything for them if they cannot unite?
Well done, Karin. That's a brilliant caveat to start the show, because you've hit on some very key notes there, things that have been observed over the last year, our growth as activists, voices within the movement. We've also been on a journey learning to understand what works, what doesn't, why things are not working, and to a certain extent, why South Africans are in fact their own worst enemies when it comes to finding solutions to sort things out. But before we go to that, because that's a whole story unto its own, I just want to hit on your initial point there where you say that yes, the majority of these millions of black people are still blaming the very small remnant white minority populations for all their problems. What they don't realize is that behind their black government, their black power structure, okay, is actually puppet masters in the background who are in themselves, in their nature, in effect, very racist and black hating, but use the black power structure to get what they want. Believe it or not, those at the heart of this perniciousness, we're talking about, of course, the controlling powers from Rome. Don't forget, the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the most racist and violent organization in American history, were a Catholic organization, and they're still in effect. That is because at the very heart of this power structure, they are in effect very elitist, very, very concerned about the maintaining purity of certain bloodlines. And that means that they don't necessarily like to interbreed with people that aren't of the same racial group. Now, this, of course, throws up a whole bunch of other stuff into the mix as to, so why now have they allowed a black government to come into power if this is still the case? People like my own father even say, oh no, the old order is dead, this old racist order that came out, with people like Hitler, and at one stage Australia had a no tolerance policy on any blacks. That was killed. It's like wipe them out. They wiped out whole islands of mainland Aborigines. The kind of genocide that went on there never happened in South Africa. The kind of genocide that went on in America to the Native American Indians. 120 million of them murdered, never went on in South Africa. We respected the blacks in South Africa. We gave them their own self-governing homeland so they could protect their culture, protect their languages, protect their heritage, and become self-determining and independent. And all of these efforts were snubbed and turned around to seem like somehow the white people were trying to steal, the white South Africans, the Afrikaners, are trying to steal the freedom of the black people as opposed to protecting their cultural heritage, which was not the case. It's been one of the most vicious and manipulative tricks in human history as to how this whole thing is played out and how it's still playing out in the mainstream media, convincing the black peoples of South Africa, because now they all have smartphones and they can all access everything. And of course now they've all had a couple of generations have been able to access education, learn to read and write. So they can now understand when the media and the mainstream media tells them, you can take the land, it's here we go. The whites took it from you, now you can take it back. So that's where we are.
Yeah, I know. And what does one, there is no way that it is going to be possible to change the history that people in South Africa are being taught. It has happened all over the world. The leftists have taken over the education. They took it over decades ago, so that the children are indoctrinated and brainwashed from day one at preschool, and they are taught that it's actually a sin and a crime to be white. And is it any wonder that we have these whites that have joined the EFF and in America, Antifa? Is it any wonder that we have them? They are ashamed of being white. I mean, there was a story the other day that I read, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry now. This guy is suing his parents for him being born white. And the courts have taken on this case.
Oh,
because he was born white. Now, if that wasn't a frivolous lawsuit, I don't know, but I'm going to follow it to see what the outcome is. I mean, if that is how, he's 20 years old, I think. So if you get to 20 and you're going to sue your parents for the crime of being white, then the world has come to a really sorry place. And sadly enough, our very children, well, no, grandchildren in my case, are facing that indoctrination. How do you turn it around? How do you change it? So you have this entire generation of blacks in South Africa. They go to preschool, they start being told white is bad, whites are thieves, whites are criminals, whites are, because one of the politicians said this week that being white is a criminal offense, one of the South African politicians. So you're being taught this at school. And you've got 3 little white faces in a class of 100 black faces. What do you think the result is going to be? It's going to be the school violence. The blacks gang up on the little white guy and beat the hell out of him because the teacher told them he was born a criminal, you know. And so, although I don't condone it, but I understand it, Mel. It's a whole leftist, ridiculous move to criminalize being white, to get rid of us, to breed us out of existence. And if they can't outbreed us, they're going to slaughter us. You know, you look at these laws passed in New York this last week, the late abortion laws. You can abort a child up to birth. Great. Great. But then, does it not lead into, okay, my child's now turned 5 and it's fat and ugly, I don't like it anymore, can I still abort it?
Yeah.
You know, is that not the slippery slope that we're on right there? When is after birth? Yeah. Is it age 2 hours? Is it age 2 years? Is it age 20 years? Where is the bottom line of this? And then in New Mexico, they've passed the law saying that assisted suicide is great. Okay, if you are really, really ill, I do think you should be allowed to choose. But, Mel, that's also a slippery slope. We're not just killing babies on one end of the line, we're going to kill the old people on the other end, because Obamacare already was insisting that people 50 years plus have to go to end-of-life counseling at least once a year. In other words, if you're over 50, go off yourself because you're a waste of space. And the government would then decide, if you were over 50, what medical care you could or could not get. So my back surgeries that I had a short while ago, I would never have been given them under Obamacare. I would have been told, well, just go die. So New Mexico is doing this thing. Now, Mel, imagine you have somebody who's got Alzheimer's and they don't know one day to the next what they're saying. So they're having a bad day and they say, I really, really want to die. And the doctor says, okay, come along, let's do it.
Yeah.
And those are the things that are direct results of this nonsense at school. You get taught this nonsense at school. Yes, we're all foolish when we're teenagers. We are idealistic and we think we know it all. I remember clearly some of the huge mistakes I made in my late teens because I thought I knew it all and I was invincible. And then you grow up and you think, oh my Lord, I hope nobody ever hears about that because that wasn't so smart of me. But being idealistic does not mean that I'm white and assume my parents for it. So it's a South African situation just enlarged to a degree where it becomes ridiculous. I would never have thought that a court would take that case seriously, but it is going to court. So that's the world we live in. It's horrific. And so why would, particularly me, this is not pointed at you, Mel, but particularly me, because I've done so much fundraising for charities in South Africa. Why would anybody want to help white South Africans when they themselves feel that it's bad to be white?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know my way around that because kids have been indoctrinated for decades and it's just ramping up now.
Yeah, it's the whole sort of identity crisis thing is actually spilling over into so many areas. I was talking about this morning. I'm an open-minded person, but I'm not so open-minded that I'll let my brain fall out.
Yeah.
Okay, like the whole transgender agenda is just another iteration of what we're talking about there, of getting people to be ashamed of their agenda. I don't want to go there because that's a whole other topic. But it's the same sort of thing, is that you can't identify with certain things because it might offend somebody else. You can't call it a he or a she. You got to call it it and a them. And I'm like going, oh my goodness, can I just go for a pee in the ladies' room, please? I don't really want an agenda attached to my pee time.
Yeah.
They're just certain things that I think people take too far because there is an agenda attached. And when you start to go, what is the practical reality and application of all this? How can a child sue their parents for their genetic code? I mean, what, I'm going to sue my mom because I was born blonde and people think I'm stupid?
Yes.
How far does something like this go? The fact that people are now able to sue someone for their genetic code, which is an inviolable code of our creation, just insane. All it does is set a precedent, as you say, for a prejudice, which is supposedly then deemed as legitimate based upon the fact that there are court cases which give it legitimacy. So it's
another one. Just while we're talking about silly, there is another one, an Indian guy, and he is suing his parents for being born at all. They gave birth to him without his consent, and he's suing them for that. And it's going to court. So the world has become so ridiculous. And what I'm trying to say is, with that nonsense being taken seriously, how on earth do we expect people to take the plight of this miserable minority of people in South Africa to heart when they are so consumed with the ridiculousness of this world we live in?
The distraction absolutely serves a purpose, and they put focus on certain things in order to keep people distracted in sort of minuscule drama. But just to answer your very poignant question there, Karin, because you and I, we did this for a long time with the sole purpose of raising international awareness of what was going on in South Africa. Years and years and years and years we were on this track. There were one or two people who came in who did a bit of a hash jump. This Sinead woman from this renegade media, who came in with a very racist attitude about it. She didn't last long. There were a couple of other people who tried to take the South African gauntlet. The problem was they weren't versed enough in the subtle political nuances to actually speak effectively on the subject. And one or two shows and then the interest is lost. I think you and I have been doing this for so long, beating this drum. And then finally, the year before last, 2017, we started to get some international politicians and stuff who were really interested, international radio hosts, so big audiences, people like Jeff Friends, Ken Daly. They all took an interest in what was going on there, because what we've been saying for a long time is what they begin to realize, that what has happened in South Africa will happen in America. And they've began to see the parallels, absolutely, particularly when you start to apply things like, communist Marxism, and you start to look at, okay, so what are the ideologies of these things? Oh, we see them happening there. And oh, we see them happening there. Hang on, the same thing's happening in both places under different labels, under different leaders, same policies. But now we have a problem where this has become a recognized thing. So there's players who are inserted into the movement, and to be able to identify what really is going on behind certain players, you need to understand that the concepts of left and right, like black and white, they are artificial mechanisms of division. And often like a South African, what I would call a relatively intelligent South African. In fact, one of our mutual friends often talks about the donderste rechts and you know, the left and the right and the left and the right and the left. And I'm going, no, hang on. I don't identify with any, because as much as I can tolerate all cultures and all skin colors, which would technically put me in the liberal camp, I certainly don't believe in the liberal ideologies or the liberalism that was espoused by people like Mandela, which was fake liberalism. So I'm not a liberal, and I certainly think there's a room for conservatism. However, I will not fall into the exclusionary mindset of believing that if you're different, you're a threat, like the right people tend to do. And then you've got something called the alt-right, which seems to be, you know, they're trying to just create categories for people to identify with certain ideologies in order to build cult followings to push certain agendas. And this is what we've got now, is something that's developed called the alt-right in American media, in the supposed alternative media, the alternative right media. And these people like Lauren Southern, people like Katie Hopkins, who, by the way, are associated with the Rebel Media, a very well-known alt-right platform run by a guy called Ira Levant. And you have to look at this particular platform. Before I get into Rebel Media, I just want to say 2 people from Rebel Media came over to South Africa. Lauren Southern did a documentary out here. Katie Hopkins came over here and had a drug overdose in the middle of the streets. Then we also had Faith Goldie, who, as you know, she wanted to come over here and do the same thing, and she ended up cancelling when Lauren pipped her to the post. Faith Goldie was also of the Rebel Media extraction. Faith Goldie also has been on the Daily Stormer, which is a very pro-white nationalist network. So those are the kind of what they're orientated towards. I would also just like to say that Lauren Southern was then stopped from going into Britain, that has Brexited, okay, and are now watching who's coming in to cause conflict there. She was stopped and banned from going into Britain because she was there to meet with Muslim leaders, okay, or anti-Muslim groups. My apologies. She was there to meet with anti-Muslim groups. But what is a journalist who supposedly went to South Africa to try and expose what's going on there? What is she doing going to Britain to meet with anti-Muslim groups? Now, the Marine Le Pen and you were speaking about this lady earlier on who's gone on to work for the media. What's her name again?
Janice Atkinson.
Janice Atkinson. Yeah. They seem to be forming what has very clearly become the alt-right. Okay, there's a very distinctive grouping of people internationally who have collectively started to form this alt-right movement. And people think that this is somehow, this is new, this is kind of seems to be where we want to go because we want to kick out all the foreigners and build frickin' walls. And guess what? Our friend Donald Trump also fits into this sort of alt-right camp because he's just a little racist, and wants to kick out all the Mexicans and stick up a wall and shut down the government and cost people, their salaries are almost 1 million people without pay for over a month because, he just, didn't want to just shut down the government because they don't want to build a wall. Ridiculousness, okay? And, from my point of view is that if we're all foreigners somewhere, yeah? We have, not because we're meant to stay in the same place our whole lives, because we move around. Somewhere we're a foreigner. When we cross a certain line, we're a foreigner.
Yeah.
And being a South African, having a South African passport, this is something that I've learned from a very early time, and that the lines and the bureaucracy that create these lines are actually part of the problem. This is the stuff that keeps us separated from the beautiful connected state that humanity is meant to be in. This is the stuff that keeps us fighting each other, that feeds the ideologies of racism, that feeds the ideologies of religious intolerance, which in turn feeds the ideologies of extremism, which results in people doing stupid things like, crusades and whatever else. I won't go into terrorist bombings because those are all false flags. But we really have to look at now these journalists that have come to South Africa, supposedly international journalists who've come in to supposedly bring awareness to the situation and understand where they're coming from, and that it's not really the same page that you and I are operating from, Karin, which is we are South Africans who are in exile because our country's on such a dire state.
Yes.
We want to try and do something about it. These are people, glory hunters, attention seekers, probably funded by intelligence agency media, through world distance intermediaries. I mean, Ira Levant paid out 1.5 million in salaries to the employees of the rebel media last year. Where does he get that kind of money from?
Yeah.
Not being funny. And they're not making that kind of money in advertising per se. I've had a look at their setup. So one has to ask, where, follow the money line, where's it coming from, and what is the agenda behind this? What is really going on here? Why are these people suddenly taking an interest in South Africa? And it suits a global agenda, which is playing out, and it's looking very dangerous from where I'm sitting.
So this global agenda, is this not to form the alt-left, the far, far left and the far, far right, and have them fight each other? Or just make them look so ridiculous that all belief in everything is lost?
Ultimately, it's about keeping us separated and divided so that we fight each other instead of looking at where the real enemy is. It's the oldest agenda. It's the, people, the thing is, if we identify with our physical forms, I'm sorry to get all spiritual and esoteric.
No.
This is the way it is. We have a body. We are a soul. It's not a case of, we are our bodies and then we have a soul. It's the other way around. We are a soul. We have a body. And the soul that walks around in this body, it's like, if I say to someone, I don't like the fact that you drive a red car, or I don't like the fact that you drive a blue car, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person driving the car. It just means that you've got a car that's got a paint color that's undesirable. Yeah. It doesn't mean that the soul inside the cavity is a bad person. We need to get down to understanding that within each being, no matter whether they're black or white and we see them walking around, there is a soul inside. That soul is attached to a mind, which is attached to thought forms, which have most likely been formed by some form of cultural heritage, indoctrination, manipulation. And we also need to understand that we got to somehow find a way to work past all of that and bring to light the one and only thing that's going to save us, which is the truth about what has happened, and the truth about what the lies that are being told and that are manipulating. And that was, I think, the real reason why we started doing what we started doing is this. We became well-researched. We connected with a lot of well-researched people.
Yeah.
Spoke with them. We gave them platforms. We got their information from them because we wanted to get this truth to people so that they could understand what had happened for themselves. And they could see the manipulation firsthand.
Yeah.
So that people, empowered with this knowledge would be able to perhaps band together and take back their power.
Yeah.
That's not happened. That's not happened. What I've seen is factions forming, working against each other, being even more exclusionary than before. Let's go there because, of course, you and I got involved with the sovereign state of Good Hope. Let's talk a little bit about that. You got the chance to go with Cornelius to
the UN.
Let's talk about what happened.
Okay, so we went to New York and we went to the UN to hand in the papers of secession. And we got a very, 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 very icy reception there. Nobody in power at all wanted to speak to us. Everybody was not there. So we got the Secretary General of, I forget which branch of the UN. Anyway, his secretary came to speak with us. And she signed for the papers and she said, we need to register Meldum as well. Now, nobody wanted to put their signature on this because it was a very touchy subject and nobody wanted to touch it with a barge pole. But eventually, because we refused to leave, we just stood and stood and stood. We were not leaving until somebody took this paperwork. After all, that's what we went there for. So she signed for them, and then we went to the post office and sent registered as well with photographs of the receipts and all of this. Then we went to the African Union to speak to them. Same thing. ice cold reception. Nobody's here. Nobody can speak to you. No, 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 no. This is very touchy, says this black lady. Very touchy. I can't even be seen speaking to you. So we left our papers there as well. We got a signature for them. We left the paperwork there as well. Now the king goes back to South Africa. And lo and behold, amazing thing of amazing things. 3 different groups that I know of have claimed secession on the same land that the king seceded. So because of that, this thing is it's a laughing stock of the world. It's going to be tied up in court forever and ever. Now, I'm not taking any one of the parties' side, not even the king's. The fact of the matter is that there's always this other group that doesn't like it because I'm not going to bow down to another colored person. So I'm not being part of your secession. I'm going to have my own secession and you will have no part in it, etc., 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 until you become a fool, till the whole world's laughing at you. And the ANC was right to sit back and ignore it because they hung themselves. They put an end to the secession movement. So that's where we are with that. And it is disastrous, absolutely disastrous. Because that was a hope. Mel, you say we've given a platform to some dodgy people. But as a journalist, is that not our job to present opposing points of views? Is it not our job?
Yeah.
So given that, yes, okay, the people were a little bit dodgy, but it just proves that we are willing to listen to the whole story, not just this little portion that suits our agenda, which we don't seem to have really. Our only agenda is to help the white South Africans promote, and now I sound like a beauty queen, but promote world peace and do what we can for humanity. That is our agenda. But our agenda is not to put people in opposition to each other or to cause chaos and confusion, which unfortunately we do. We see the blowback on us of stuff that we've done. So yes, we do cause confusion and chaos and trolling and doxing and all kinds of horrible things that blow back on us. But then again, as I said to you the other day, it's to be expected. We are right over the target and we're going to get blowback. And it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. So we must brace for it and carry on going. But I do not think that we have some hidden agenda. And I would be horrified to find out that between us we had formed some hidden agenda. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not doing a racist thing in South Africa. I acknowledge that the black population is suffering as badly, if not worse, than the white population. They are starving. They don't have jobs. They're idle in the townships all day with nothing to do. They don't have money, so they don't have internet. They're not even getting a good education. I mean, if you only need 30% to pass, you're not getting an education to speak about. So they are suffering as badly. But I don't like Obama at all, but he said elections have consequences. So the black South Africans must realize that they are to blame for the way they are living because they continuously vote ANC. So they are voting these same skellums, skamorgs, bad people into power endlessly. And they don't sit back and complain about the result of it. You know, you've lived with it for 25 years now. You know it's time for a change and a turnaround, but you won't do it because they gave you a T-shirt and a packet of KFC and said, go vote. So, you know, in a way, it's their own fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
The white people, on the other hand, what is happening to them, if we talk about voting and consequences, we did the referendum, there was an overwhelming yes vote. So yes, the consequences are what we're living with now. But we were lied to. We were lied to big time before we went and gave that vote. And it was not what we voted for. We did not vote to have no power whatsoever, no say in and pay 97% of the taxes. That was not what we voted for. However, the consequences are really, really bad for white South Africans, and that is why we champion them. They are a last little race on the tip of Africa, the southernmost tip of Africa, with nobody willing to help them, nobody willing to give them a voice, everybody piling on them. They are endangered. They are prisoners in their own home to try and protect themselves, those who are left with a home. Our hearts have to go out to them, and somebody has to speak for them. The black people have the ANC, the EFF, the Black Land First, the DA. The whites have nobody. So it's our duty to stand up for them. Everybody fights for this little frog here, this mouse there, the white rhino, whatever. What about the white South African?
Yes.
You know?
Oh, Karin, that's why I love you. You know, absolutely, that is the reason why we do this. As people who live in exile and who have to daily see the stuff come through our news feeds, it's daily horrors, it's daily attacks, it's daily degeneration of truly one of the most beautiful places on earth. And, you know, it just does not have to happen. It does not have to happen. We absolutely have all the resources in South Africa that we do not need to import anything. We are one of the wealthiest nations resource-wise. We can medically care for, house, clothe, feed every person in Southern Africa and beyond if the resources of the country were managed effectively and the politicians weren't so corrupt and kept pocketing all the money. Now, you brought up a very good point, which I want to also just quickly visit there, which is the fact that, they keep voting for the ANC to come into government. My mom's domestic worker comes in and says, I vote ANC because of Mandela. And my mom says, well, Google Mandela is dead. This is what they associate it with Mandela.
Yeah.
And Mandela, whether you like him or not, the simple fact is that the ideologies he put forward as his ideal of what South Africa was supposed to be never materialized and certainly aren't being carried out under the people who came after him. In fact, all they've done is rape the government. They haven't looked after their own people, and things have just gotten worse. And those who were around in 94 know that the promises that were made to them have not materialized. And those are the people who are now, who were kids then, and they're now hitting their 40s and 50s, and they're in the streets protesting about the fact that nothing's changed. It's gotten worse. Their kids now have no future. And there's a lot of unrest, indoctrination, feeding the agenda, and unfortunately posturing the blame in the wrong direction, which, as you say, falls on the shoulders of us poor white South Africans, who the majority of the taxes that are being paid come from the white South Africans. So now imagine to get rid of all the white South Africans, who's going to pay a little bit of taxes that actually do make it to public services for the roads and whatever else, okay? There's another thing that is worth mentioning here, and that is, I've had the blessed opportunity, as have you, to get to know the Khoisan Nation, something that I didn't really, when I was living in South Africa and we were educated at school, we learned a little bit about the Bushmen and the Hottentots and how they used to bury eggs in the desert with water, and they used to remember where they were so they could traverse the desert, and they had water storage and ostrich eggs, and that's about as much as we learned. There were a few cave paintings here, and they wore loincloths. We never actually got into what these people are all about. And the great thing about having worked on the Sovereign State of Good Hope project was I really had the opportunity to research this. And it's funny because I had already had a caveat into this for the work that I was doing through my dragonology work, looking at the oldest ritual site, Jovi with the one at Sedilo Hills, which is smack in the middle of Khoisan territory. And I got to understand the artworks and their communication systems and how advanced these people potentially were at one point in their lives. And it's a very interesting thing to get to know a group of people who we actually, if I'm truly honest, were kind of excluded from our educational base when we were kids. And to understand that these people actually have the right to, based upon the logic and reasoning of, well, we were here first.
Yes.
That's why we're taking back the land. They actually have the right to claim that land.
Yeah.
And knowing now, and I've spoken to a lot of different people, dealt with a lot of different people, and I'm still speaking with a lot of different people. And the one thing the Khoi and the Nama and all those people in that part of the world, all those tribes, the Khoi, the San, the Nama, all the different various tribes of that part of the world, the one thing they know, they're not recognized by the Ngunis, who
Yes.
they call them. They're not recognized. And when the Ngunis get rid of the white people, that's the ruling black tribes of South Africa. When they get rid of the white people, they're going to come for these other minority tribes.
Yeah.
These minority tribes know it, which is why they want to stick together with the white South Africans and work with us. They're not turning their backs on us because they're not falling for the old school propaganda that it was all our fault. And that, because they know they were the ones on their land first. Yeah. That actually they technically have the right to it. It's not up to these other people who came in from the north at a much later stage to now say, well, we were here first, because they weren't.
No, and yes, it was a great honor to get to know those people and their spiritual beliefs, and I still believe, no matter what happened after the UN trip, I still believe that the king of the Khoisan, or the Khoisan without a king or whatever, they have the right to secede. Yes. And if it took one man, a leader, because he does not call himself king, he's Kubaha, which is loosely translated as king. He doesn't, in his own language, is not calling himself king. But if it takes a person to take the lead and to secede on their behalf, the motivation and the treaties behind that, I still stand fast with them because they were correct. They were correct and they were well done. The way they were going to form, they hadn't decided that it wasn't going to be called government, but for our purposes, the government, the way the governing bodies were going to be formed, was the best process I've ever heard in my life. The only thing I've heard that comes near it is the great experiment that was America, what became the United States of America. The founding fathers had the right ideas. Now the king has gone one step further, and I was astonished and still remain to this day astonished at the thought, the care, the love, the concern about every kind of community that was involved in this. That is how it should be. So the fact that it went off the rails for numerous reasons, we both know a lot of them, but for numerous reasons, that is sad, because had it gone ahead, this that the white South Africans are now facing, they would be facing by choice if they didn't go to Good Hope.
Absolutely. And I just wanted, since we are talking about Good Hope, there were a number of factions that kind of, when Good Hope was established, I did the whole, okay, let's try and bring people together, as did you. All right, let's go and contact all our media people and get them involved in supporting you. And you got all the Jeff Friends and all of your various media contacts made over the years. I did the same thing. I went to all the various groups that I had interviewed and worked with here in South Africa, in South Africa on the network, such as Zuidlanders. I went to, I spoke to them. I said, well, why aren't you back to secession? At first they said, well, we don't want to be associated with anything that may look like sedition, which, it's a fair enough reason, but it wasn't sedition. It was clearly secession, which is a legitimate process, even by international law.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, well, and eventually at some point they did show some interest, but this was only after USAF had gotten involved. Yeah. And then I had already warned the king about getting involved with USAF based upon various conversations I'd had there. They got involved and very quickly also were chucked out the mix, but went very ugly and started sending out demands for money and getting very ugly on the whole situation. And to be honest with you, the two people, and I won't name them because I don't want to get sued by them because they are that vicious, the two people who actually are the primal leaders, they have caused so much manipulation and confusion behind the scenes and completely cannot be trusted. I had my confidence betrayed by them blatantly. After I sent them something, I said, please do not share, and they shared it and lied, saying, oh no, they found it come up in a feed somewhere else, except I hadn't posted it anywhere else, except I shared it with them in a private message. So and that was my resignation, which I sent them 3 days before the actual date, and then they posted it 3 days early, which was the wrong thing to do because it made me look like I was associated with their group, which I wasn't. I never was part of USAF. And in the end, I was actually pushed out by the various members, and a whole bunch of their members took me off as a friend on Facebook because I'm not Christian. They didn't want to be associated with anybody who wasn't Christian.
There you go.
So this is it. You got these groups who are still so, they've got these ideologies and they're very exclusionary of anything that's different to them. You know, I was raised a Christian. The fact that I know a longer a practicing Christian, no, that's my personal business, but nothing to do with anybody else. Yeah, I sometimes post memes which might mock some of the hypocrisy and blatant idiocies of religion. Okay. But, you know, you'd be a fool not to question that which simply does not make sense. And there's a lot of things they write about in religion and expect us to adhere to, which just bloody do not make sense. So, I'm not going to be a fool and just blindly bow down to things that do not make sense. I will question them. And if that offends somebody to the point where they take me up as a friend and push me out of their so-called political groups, you know, I probably wasn't meant to be a part of it in the first place. You did me a favor. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm not there to bow down to any cult ideology. And I remain an independent journalist, you know, just barely over broke, just barely getting there. But we do what we do, and we do it from a place of pure intent and love.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who have attacked me, trolls recently as well, who come at me with, oh, you're a racist. And I do want to deal with it for one moment because I know you get this too. You know, people think you're a racist.
Yeah.
So does it make me a racist to stand up for against the murder of my own people? I want to know, does that make me a racist because I stand up against the murder of a cultural group from which I'm genetically descended? I don't understand the logic behind this.
No.
Never said a bad thing about blacks in general in a disdainful way because I actually have a great love for cultural diversity. I wanted to travel from a young age because I wanted to go see the whole world and all the different flavors, you know, from different places, talk to different color faces in different languages. I don't particularly have an issue with different cultures. I like different things. I'm not one who is afraid of different things, like people who, you know, are Christian, they're afraid of all other religions and anything else that's not Christian is wrong, for example. You know, or for example, people who are whites and believe that anybody that's not white is impure or is lesser, you know, that sort of neo-Nazi ideology. I do not subscribe to any of those things. And yet, despite all the work we have done and despite all the explaining, people still come at us with, oh, you're white, so you're racist, and that's why you have this opinion.
Yes.
And it's the hardest thing to shift past.
Yeah, I'm a racist, I'm a neo-Nazi. It's a good thing that I live in Texas because I belong in one of those white hoods and so on and so forth. These are the things I get told, amongst even worse things that one could never say on air. But yeah, those kind of things. Now, Mel, I've made it very clear, every program I've ever been on, I'm not anti-black. I'm anti the black murder of my white South African people. And I've been attacked for that too, calling them my people because they're not my people. So, you know, I don't really know what one is supposed to say to be politically correct, but it's was my country. It's where I grew up. It's where my family come from for generations back. And they are my people. And I have a very big place in my heart for that beautiful, once so beautiful country, because what I am homesick for and would do anything to go back to doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you see that daily in the photographs coming out of South Africa, the mess that country has become, the state of the hospitals, the state of the schools, the burning down of entire towns that has happened recently. Entire towns, you just burn them down because, well, I'm angry today. It's too much. I mean, the universities are closed this week because of protests, because they must get, even if you have bad debt with the university, you must be given accommodation and freedom to go to lectures, etc. And if not, well, we'll burn it down. So they're burning universities again. They burned 3 schools because last year they burned 3 schools which have not been rebuilt. So they burnt another 3 in protest against the 3 that they burnt last year. It blows my mind. And so if it's racist to speak out against the race that is perpetuating these things, then I'm afraid I'm going to have it tattooed on my forehead. I am a racist, if that is what a racist is. Because if there were Martians doing it, I'd be speaking out. And if it was the opposite way around and the whites were doing this to a tiny minority black group, I would be speaking out because it's wrong. And I'm going to stand up against what's wrong. So if we're racist, Mel, then so be it.
You know, yes. I keep telling people it's not a racial thing. It's a murder thing. I'm anti-murder, and I'm anti the murder of my people based upon the fact that they belong to a specific genetic group.
Yes.
And they're being blamed for problems that were started 25 years ago. People say, oh, you white people, you deserve what you're getting because you did this to us. I would just like to point out, like, I am turning 43 this year, okay? Yeah. And I am what I am at this stage of my life. I want to take you back to when Mandela was released. I was barely 14, 15 years old, just coming out of my, early puberty. I had no idea what politics was. I barely, had any idea of anything.
But Mel, you had white privilege.
Oh.
You got privilege on the back of the people who oppressed and murdered the blacks. So don't come tell me the story that you went. This is what I get in response. You see, those are the responses you get.
I tell people straight, listen here. My formative years, when my ideas of the world were shaped, was an era of tolerance. Which was Mandela was released. I was a teen when Mandela was released. And for the first time when I went to university, I had black friends and it was a bloody novelty. We embraced it. Man, I'm bringing my black friend home. And I remember my mom's housekeeper, a domestic worker, went to my mother and goes, Abel, madam, there's a black woman in your shower. Because suddenly my black friend had come home from university and was in my mom's shower. And this was like, of course, the domestic used the madam's shower back in those days. That's the way it was. So I love watching that, and I love being at that cultural precipice where my parents watched me push the boundaries of. I would get a housekeeper to come sit down at the kitchen table and have dinner with us, as opposed to her going to her room to have dinner, which was the done thing in the apartheid era. I always pushed that boundary because I believe in treating these people like equals. And I was actually I was looked at strangely by some of my circles of friends because I was running around Durban with Zach McHugh. He was the DJ for P4 Radio. He was one of my best mates, and we used to go to the Durban July together. We used to do everything together. I was working in media and stuff, and we were just good friends. I think people thought maybe we were a couple, and back then it just wasn't the done thing for a black and white person to be like public like that. We all knew it went on, but it just was still a bit taboo. We did everything together, and I did not care. And I say this to people, I've never been a racist. I've grown up in the era of tolerance. So I don't give a shit if people come with white privilege. Let me tell you what, I can't help it that I grew up in a family who worked hard, did well, and gave me a privileged upbringing. I was lucky, and I was blessed. For that, I was able to travel and see the world and get a good education. Yes, I'm always appreciative of being born into a family of privilege. But using the term white privilege,
No.
Sorry.
No, I absolutely agree with you because, I've looked in my bank recently for my white privilege and it really just never appears there. It just, I don't know why. They've lost my white privilege address somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
No, really, Mel, where is this white privilege? You say you grew up privileged, certainly, because your parents worked hard and did well. But that was the top 10% in South Africa. The rest of them were middle-class people who did the best they could. They went to work every day. They had their financial struggles. There was no particular, you did well because you worked hard. It's like Gary Player said, it's amazing how lucky I get. The more I practice, the luckier I get, And that the white people, they had more privilege because they worked hard.
Yes.
Or got a bigger start in life or whatever. It really, they worked for what they got. There was no inherent privilege behind it. So, and there were equal number of poor people. We didn't have, I was saying the other day, we really didn't have them in the streets like now. You get to any street corner, there's 4 or 5 white guys with their piece of cardboard, no job, no work, please help, 5 kids to feed. There wasn't that. There was some poverty, and they were the hobos. I mean, I was joking about that. They go to Durban for the winter and come to Johannesburg for the summer. But they were few and far between. It was something you remarked on if you saw poverty-stricken white people.
Yeah.
But then again, it was our country. The blacks each had their own homelands where they could go and make a success. And so the whites had this little slice of it, which we made a success of, and the rest of the world castigated us, threw us out, and gave us a bad name in perpetuity. If you're white and from South Africa, oh, well, that says everything they need to know about you. And it's sad, Mel. It's very sad.
It is sad. And it's sad to see how the black people now think that they can take away what the white people have. And I want to make a very clear point. I can only speak for myself upon my own experience. I can't speak for everyone. Everyone's circumstances are different. But no one gave my mom and my father anything. My mom and dad both come from very impoverished families. And my my grandfather was killed in the Colesberg mining disaster of 1960, where it's one of the biggest mining disasters in history. And he was one of the people who were killed. He was a mining engineer caught in the mine. My gran had to raise, 4 kids as a single mom. And she would tell me how she would make fat cook and go stand at the bus station and sell this at the bus station on Saturdays to earn extra money to feed her children on top of still having a full-time job. So my mom came from a very poor family, and she's done well for herself. But she's worked hard. I remember going with her to work on Saturdays when she would, sit the estate agency office on duty just to spend time with her because I wouldn't get to see her during the rest of the week. She worked so hard, but she came from nothing. No one gave her a damn thing. She came from a very poor family, as did my dad. Came from a poor family, no one gave him anything. He started at the very, very bottom of his company. And after 40 years, he was the marketing director, import-export director of Masonite Africa, which is a Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed company. And internationally, people know what a piece of Masonite board is, right?
Yeah.
So it's an internationally known trademark product. And he was the managing director and import-export director after starting off at the very bottom as a sales rep. He worked hard his whole life to get there.
Yeah.
And he was fantastic with his team. When, I've watched them sacrifice so much time that they could have been spending with family, time that I was being raised by a housekeeper, so that they could be in a position where they could do things like buy me a car when I turned 18, pay for my university tuition, make sure that I was well-traveled, not got to go on a holiday overseas every second year or so. And for that, I'm grateful. For that, I'm so grateful. But nothing was given to them. They worked for it. And now here come these people who don't want to work for anything and want to take away stuff. They got this idea that the whites were given everything. My parents worked so hard for everything. They're just barely hanging on to it. because
Yeah.
it's almost impossible in South
And
Africa.
yet, Mel, from the end of March, they can get a knock on their door and say, as of tomorrow, you must get out of here. We're taking it away from you. Everything that they have worked a lifetime for, just leave this place, give us the keys and everything in it. That is what this expropriation of land without compensation is down to. They can come and knock on your door and tell you out. And what you may not take much, you can take some clothes maybe, but the rest belongs to us, because that is what it is. And that is from the end of March. They've got until the 31st of March to change the constitution. And then the official expropriation will start taking place. In the meantime, though, the EFF and BLF are telling the black masses that we don't have to wait for it. It's already in the Constitution. We don't need to change the Constitution. Just go do it. So this one wine farmer in the Cape, he had 100 huts put up on his land overnight. Between the time he went to bed and the time the sun came up, there were 100 shacks on his property. They then told him, you best go, because we're going to burn your house down if you don't leave it. So they barricaded themselves in the house and were terrified that the whole place was going to be taken. They called the police. No, sorry, we can't remove these people. Now, I know that the law in South Africa says after, I think it's 48 hours, it's either 24 or 48 hours. If they've been there that long, you then have to go through the whole Supreme Court eviction story that costs you tens of thousands to get rid of them. But if they've been there less than 24 hours, the police can come and chase them away. But the police obviously wouldn't come. So the guys stayed there essential 24, 48 hours. Now you can't get rid of them. And they started burning the grapevines down and cutting them down. Now, you and I both know, Mel, those grapes came with the French Huguenots. They were smuggled out of France and brought to South Africa. And our vineyards came from those original cuttings sneaked out of France by the French Huguenots, and that was the 1820 settlers. So our vineyards date back to then. They don't belong to any black person. They are mainly in the Cape, where there were no black people for 150 years after the whites arrived. But now they feel that they can go affirmative shopping and just take back. I mean, Malema is telling them that you can't steal from a white person because you're just taking back what was originally yours. Now, don't tell me that some 17-year-old black person is going to go and take your parents' land because it was his, or take their business because it was originally his. No, Mel, they worked for it, and nobody deserves it except them. But that is not the way it seemed. And so I'm really scared that we're at a critical point in South Africa when this guy can go, I think his name is Lindsay Marsdorf from the Black Land First movement. He can go on state-run radio and say straight out, we are going to kill every white man, his wife, his sons, his daughters, and his cats and dogs. Everything above and below ground, I don't know which part that refers to, but anyway, everything above and below ground that is white, we are going to kill. Now, he comes out on Radio Sonagrense, state-run Afrikaans radio, and says that, Mel. So the little white interviewer, the show host, says she was taken aback and there was dead silence for a while. And then she said in a tiny little voice, but surely you're not going to come and kill me. And he said, of course we are. You're white. You bear the white crimes and sins like everybody else. Well, she was horrified, absolutely horrified, because the liberal left in South Africa think that because they are pro-ANC or don't ever say anything against what's going on in the country, they are immune. from expropriation, from murder, from torture. They really think they're immune. My question to them is, do you think that when 8 young black men armed with pangas come to your house, they're going to ask you, excuse me, did you vote AMC? Are you liberal? Are you white? I mean, are you English? Are you Afrikaans? No, you're white. That is sufficient for them to kill you. In fact, I was speaking to a lawyer in South Africa the other day, and I said that I saw a case where the guy's defense in court for murdering was, well, I murdered them because they're white. And he said, you can go through court records in South Africa, and there are hundreds of cases where that was their defense. I killed them because they were white, not because they stole my stuff, they attacked my grandparents, they did something and this was a revenge killing. No, they were white, and that was sufficient. So our program starting up again is quite important because we have reached a critical juncture with this coming in at the end of March, but already started with the Chinese taking over the lands that they've stolen, with the loan that the Chinese have given to Eskom, stating in the loan documents, if you cannot repay the interest, we will take over the power stations in South Africa. Now, we already have sold them the coal. The first 176 farms on the list of expropriation, the top 3 are on huge coal deposits, which will be given to the Chinese. The fact that the Chinese have been allowed to open 13 Chinese-run police stations in South Africa, and the fact that the Russians have bought uranium mines in South Africa. If you look at that entire picture, and the fact that Eskom says there is no coal, so you're going to have rolling blackouts and be without power for up to 6 months. If you look at that whole picture, we couldn't be restarting up at a better or more crucial juncture of the South African story, because I think we've reached critical mass, and it's now or never.
Yes, it's absolutely a great time to be back on air, and I do want to say that it wasn't necessary sort of retrospective that needed to happen. It's one thing to come out and constantly go on about it, but also just to take a step back and watch everything unfold.
Yes,
as
yes.
I did last year, and it wasn't necessary. And I do want to say to people, the South African cause has never ever been far from my heart, even though I may not be posting as much about it, or I've been a bit quiet. I was involved behind the scenes with a few different projects, which to a certain extent actually prohibited me from speaking as freely as I would like to. So I for that reason, I've had to be a bit quiet, but I've kind of realized that my roots is always as a truth seeker and speaker, and that's what I'm going to continue doing with regards to South Africa, and trying to raise awareness about what's really going on, sifting through the bullshit, Karin, because there's lots of that out there.
Oh, my Lord.
What we need is people like you and I who have the ability to look through the different layers without getting sucked into any cult ideology.
Yes.
That's what I try to do. That is actually, if I can just say, the most dangerous thing within our society at the moment. People are becoming aware, these unrest. Some people are even on the precipice of waking up. But when they start to explore what their options are, a lot of them get sucked into, again, what we spoke about earlier, a leftist ideology, a right ideology. They get, like all the black people in South Africa, sucked into a Marxist ideology because they get told that is the solution. Or you get sucked into a fanaticist ideology of any description. It could be Muslim, Hinduism, Buddhism, any bloody ism you imagine. But believe me, so the one of the advocates of ideologies is that everything else except us is wrong.
Yes.
Therefore, you've got to be intolerant of everything else.
Yes.
So, I just, people come to me, what's your spiritual orientation? I go, well, you're asking about my religion. You're really asking about my brand of intolerance, because that's what it is. And I say that for any cult ideology, it's the same thing. It's got rules, it's got conformance, it's got non-variance. It's not what I call got an evolving structure, which is what we always need.
Rigid,
It's
very
very
rigid.
rigid.
Yeah.
Everything that works has to have an evolving structure in it. In other words, you cannot have one person at the center of everything, because that person needs to move out that space so something else can come into its place. That is an evolving structure. Someone who's at the top of a hierarchy controlling everything, okay, that's when the corruption creeps in, because there's no checks and balances at a higher level.
Uh-huh.
And you know, when we work with all these different groups and we see everyone what they're presenting, and I've had so many people, and I do have to bring this up, so many people behind the scenes after I worked, well, during my time with Sovereign State of Good Hope as the international media advisor, and after, a lot of people approached me wanting me to come in and join their group, be a spokesperson for this one, be part of that. And the honest truth is, when I looked at all these groups very carefully, because there's no way I was just getting thrown into or jumping into anything else again, I didn't see anything different from what we currently have. And I didn't see them doing anything that was going to make the difference that we needed, because they were going at it from the one thing that everybody thinks is where the game is being played, but it's not, and that is the political field. The illusion of politics is one of the biggest cult ideologies that keep people enslaved. Okay, so we've gotten, you know, the scientific age has kind of gotten people over religionism, and those with a bit of sense now go on to, oh, what's intellectual? Let's look at politics. Okay, politics become the new cult du jour. Get sucked into this, and I'm kind of going, well, that's never for me been where the change is made. For me, the change lies with the people, you know, coming into their power and understanding the truth and knowing the deception, so that they don't make the same mistakes again. You know?
Yeah.
That is where the change is going to happen. And yes, sadly, we've had to sit back and observe a number of these groups coming in, trying to control the narrative, trying to control this awakening process, trying to garnish a revolution and
make money off it. That is my biggest gripe. Every one of them needs donations for, we don't know what exactly, but we need them. And you know, that just gets up my nose, because yes, I do collect donations for the starving white people in South Africa, but I collect it for one charity. And that charity, you're welcome to go and donate direct to them, or investigate my involvement with them, or whatever. You know, it's all very open. I do not collect for some unspecified cause that maybe one day possibly we'll do this thing for you, so we need you to pay for $1,500 today. You know, that those are the groups that you are talking about. And the Johnny Come Latelys. Mel, there was a video the other day, and I'm not going to name names, but it really got up my nose. These people have got a petition to the International Criminal Court, and I think they may even have delivered papers. And the guy says on this YouTube, he doesn't understand why nobody has done this prior to him doing it. You did it. Charles Granger did it at your own expense, with your own funds, years ago, broke yourselves, suffered immense personal loss through doing it. And this Johnny Come Lately stands up there on this YouTube and says, well, I'm the first one who's ever done this. And I don't understand why somebody didn't do this before. I want to vomit when I see stuff like that, because the contribution, I am not asking for credit, because I have not been to the International Criminal Court, and that was the one thing that really got me. But the point is, the contribution of people like ourselves. Sunette Bridges was doing it long before I ever did it. Okay, she's given up and gone away, but that's not the point. There is a whole stream of people, ahead of these Johnny-come-latelys who have done the exact same thing. They've been to the International Criminal Court. They've been to the United Nations. They have been to the European Union. Why is it that these people who popped out of nowhere towards the end of last year are suddenly the group to be part of? Because they are moving and shaking. Mel, really believe me, I'm not upset for me because I haven't done those things. I have not been to the International Criminal Court, but I know people who have. Yeah, I know people who have. And I get the murred, really the murred that you are not given credit for the stuff that you have done. This group of sheep following after them, wow, we're so proud of you, yay, yay, yay. Why haven't you done your homework? Why don't you know it has been done? Why do you not know that it didn't work? Why don't you know that they don't care? And take your energies and do something new.
You know, you should actually...
Sorry, I'm mad.
Karin, you know, you should send me that video, and if you want, I'll send you a copy of the receipt from the International Criminal Court. You know, like you, when you got a copy of the...
Yes.
Got a copy from the International Criminal Court of actually having hands in the documentation for I've got all of that, you know, and it's on, in fact, my resignation letter. I don't know if you ever saw that resignation letter.
Yes,
I wrote. I stuck it on there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
So, for example, I published this when I went to deliver the papers to the International Criminal Court. It was backed by a group of people called Independence Commission Africa. I know you've even once before published their documentation and paperwork.
Yeah.
Their international media person, and I was the person who hand-delivered these papers, no less than 3 times. And you know what? They did nothing with it. What they did, in fact, was South Africa left the International Criminal Court.
Exactly,
which is
that was the result.
No one's done anything for a while.
Yeah.
Because guess what? When the furore died down, South Africa's left the International Criminal Court. We can no longer bring them to the International Criminal Court.
Yeah.
They stopped trying to do anything, which is what we started doing. We stopped trying to do anything because we could no longer bring them.
Yeah.
And then suddenly now they're reconsidering rejoining the ICC. See, it's a little ballet dance they do.
Yes, but Mel, these same Johnny-come-latelys should have done their homework and known that the International Criminal Court has bugger all jurisdiction over South Africa right now. So you're wasting time, energy, and the donations you're asking for.
Yes. You know what? We should actually tackle these people directly and send them the proof that it has been done and the reasons why it didn't work. And all those people who are thinking of sending donations to these people who are now going to the International Criminal Court, you're wasting your money. We did it before, and all South Africa did was remove themselves from the ICC treaty.
Yes.
And I just want to say that treaty ain't worth shit, because guess why? The 2 biggest war crime countries on the planet, being Israel and America, are not signed up to that treaty.
There you
go. A war crimes treaty with the 2 biggest war crime states on the planet not signed up to it is worth nothing. The whole thing is nothing but an expensive public relations scheme to make people think that actually there is some justice in the world when really there isn't. I lived in The Hague. I lived in Holland for 10 years. I lived in The Hague for a number of those years. There's commonly known amongst the locals, even the foreigners that live in The Hague, they call the Peace Palace Palais de la Misdade, meaning the palace of crime. It's known. It's not a peace palace. This is the place where people sit and plot bloody war together. Right? So it's a complete farce. The ICC, the Peace Palace, that whole international, sort of jurisdictional blah blah fluff that they've got going on. It's a load of shite. I'm sorry if people buy into that stuff still. Please do yourself a favor and go and download a free copy of my ebook, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy, and learn the truth. And again, it's free because we don't make money off the suffering of our own people.
There you go. Now you were saying the angle that you come at it from is to draw awareness and try and get people together. And the introspection time that you had while we were off air, you were looking at the big picture. Well, so have I been. And what I think my function as a whole is to pull all the disparate threads together, because I've had time to just sit and look instead of having to talk about it ad nauseum all the time. I've had time to just sit and look. And if you look, this thing fits in here. That I love jigsaw puzzles, so this is just up my alley. So I've been fitting all these disparate pieces together. And for me, we need to paint the big picture. And if I am mistaken in my conclusions, they're mine. And somebody can come and point out to me the error, and I would love to learn by that. But I can only draw my own conclusions from all the pieces. And I am more mystified now than when I started, because I don't understand why the Western world, America's at a standoff with Russia and China right now. There is a huge fight brewing there. So why is the Western world sitting and watching China and Russia take over the whole of Africa, when Africa has got all the resources that any country could ever hope to own? And no, Africa is not a country. Don't, excuse me, people who think that Africa is a country. No, it is not. It is 37 or 57, I forget the exact number, separate countries, of which South Africa is a tiny little one at the southernmost point. But the whole of Africa is being bought, stolen by the Chinese. The Russians have got their hand in it as well. And this uproar in America, because they got 10% of our uranium reserves, they've bought whole uranium mines in South Africa. Now, why is the Western world not listening to you and I and doing something to help white South Africans when they can see the error of their ways? If the communist countries own Africa with all its riches, and they're not going to care about the black people, let me just tell you this. They're not going to give a damn about the black people there. Enslave, they'll enslave them if they need to. The Chinese will work them to death without any mercy, because they do it to their own people.
Yes. Whilst putting an RFID chip into their hand.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what they're doing to their own people now.
Yes, yes. So why is the Western world sitting back and watching communist countries take over this enormous continent with enormous riches and doing nothing? Because the white population of South Africa is the biggest natural white population living in the whole of Africa. They are the largest remaining population of whites in Africa. And we are doing bugger all to help them.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Well done. Put into that context. And I will give you the reason why, but you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
You have to understand the greater context. And I'm not plugging my book because I don't make money off this, but if people want to reference these facts, go check out South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy and understand that it's not about America against Russia, America against China. What you have is people who are on the global stage, played off as being complete opposites. But I mean, you don't have to do much of a search to find the American President Vladimir Putin having dinner and playing chess and smoking cigars and drinking whiskey together in these old boys clubs. You know, it is an old boys club. Behind the scenes, they're all big mates working to an agenda. This agenda, it plays out opposites, because guess why? The people who actually play both sides at the very top, they're the bankers, and they make a lot of money out of the war industry. And the only way you can promote war is by giving people the impression that, oh, we've got enemies that need to be killed. We need lots more tax money to spend on defense, so that we can buy arms. And if anyone doubts this, I always reference the Vatican as one of the people, that one of the puppet masters at the very top controlling both sides of the action. Please just do your own research. The second biggest arms company in the world, okay, most of its shares are owned by the Vatican's bank. Okay, the majority of the shares in the second biggest arms company in the world are owned by the Vatican Bank. Now, try to put that into the context of things and understand what that means. Yeah. This is all about money. War,
yeah, of course.
How are we going to get the public to support war through taxes? We have to play off enemies against each other in the public realm, which is why America seems to be at war with China, seems to be at war with Russia. And yes, they may genuinely pull out guns and nuke each other.
Yeah.
It's by design.
Of course.
It's by design.
And it's the same people arming both sides of the conflict.
Exactly.
And making megabucks. And you and I and little Johnny in the army, we are all collateral damage. And no number is big enough to put them off the idea. No number of deaths is big enough to stop them doing it. It is disgraceful and disgusting. And the sooner people wake up to the fact that they're not even a pawn in the game, really, they're not as little expendable as your pawns are. You mean nothing to governments. Nothing. You're not even a number. Your tax money is all they want from you. And your death on the battlefield if they call you to do that. Other than that, they couldn't care a damn about you.
No, that's the honest truth. And the sooner people start to recognize that, perhaps they'll start supporting corrupt governments. Because why do you want to support people that don't give a damn about you? Why do you want to support people that make you pay for your own debts? I mean, your tax money is literally in the bullets and bombs that kill people.
Yes.
You're paying for the murder of other people and eventually the murder of yourself when those guns get turned back on you.
Well, Mel, I just want to read you how much each of these countries pay. Germany, the UK, and USA invest in South Africa every single year. So the UK, 519 billion rand. The Netherlands, 346.3 billion. Belgium, 285.7 billion in aid to South Africa last year. The USA is pretty low down the list, 129 billion, Germany 94 billion. In all, the 5 countries, the UK, Netherlands, US, Germany, and Switzerland, paid, I can't see the thing. But anyway, those are the 5 countries that wrote this memorandum to Cyril Ramaphosa. Do you know about that? Those 5 countries that paid that much in aid to South Africa. So they sent a memorandum to, here we go, the 5 embassies. The African National Congress has accused the US, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and Switzerland of interference for sending a joint memorandum to President Cyril Ramaphosa stating their concerns with the corruption in South Africa. On Sunday, the Sunday Times reported that the 5 embassies wrote to the president warning him that failure to act against those implicated in corruption placed foreign investment at risk. This led to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation to summon representatives of the 5 countries saying they'd breached protocol. In a statement, the ANC describes the countries as dramatic Western imperialist forces and former colonizers who act as holier than thou. The party says it doesn't want to relate to the countries the history of master-slave relations. The ANC says South Africa has embarked on a process of ridding itself of state capture and corruption. So that was their answer, that you didn't go through the correct channels. But, Mel, what I'm saying is look how much money those 5 countries give in aid to South Africa every single year. Now, you were talking about the companies that have the blood of the wars on their money. and on their bullets and on they created that. The money that they have is drenched in blood. Well, the money that these people are giving to South Africa is equally drenched in blood. They are paying for the white genocide in South Africa. Now, so many people say, don't use the word genocide because it isn't a genocide. If you look at the 8 stages of genocide, it damn well is a genocide. It's the wrecking of their culture, their language, their education systems, polarizing them, calling them cockroaches, calling them settlers, colonizers, etc., etc. It is a genocide by those very standards. So yes, the bodies are not piling up in the streets, but they might as well be. Because, Mel, did you know that the number of people murdered, not just white people, but the number of people murdered in South Africa in the last 25 years tops 1 million? The South African police force admit to 500,000, but they themselves say that only 40% of crime is reported. So double that number, which Interpol says is more correct. Double the number. 1 million murders in 25 years in a country at peace. And the world is giving them these enormous numbers of figures in aid to help them kill each other. What is this?
Karin, it's insane, actually. And what's even, I want to point out to a couple of things when you talk about people giving South Africa money, because it gets even more crazy. I want to talk about South Africa's golden girl, Charlize Theron. She's the biggest private donor to the African National Congress. Yes. She is so we're not talking about an organization, a foundation, or a company, a private individual. She gives the biggest, she has been the biggest single, the largest amount of money from a private donor has come from Charlize Theron, very wealthy, Oscar-winning actress, done very well for herself, beautiful lady. But what most people don't know about Charlize Theron is she's actually of Huguenot extraction. This is the line of people that I come from, is the Huguenots. Yes. Theron is a Huguenot name. It's a French Huguenot name. Yeah. And her uncle, Danny Theron, was one of the Boer generals in the Boer War. Yes. Yes. Right? Not only that, she's also grown up on one of these farms that are now being supposedly taken over by the black people, where all these people are being killed. So she's a farm girl, having grown up amongst these people who are now being genocided. And yet, our golden starlet, Charlize Theron, is funding the African National Congress, who are the people killing her own people. Yeah. And thus is the insanity of it, because the stars legitimize them, and they're part of this whole sort of pernicious public relations and mind control agenda that's put upon the public. If anybody doubts that, all you have to do is go and watch some of the films that she's involved with to understand the agenda she's involved with. Mm-hmm. You do take a look at films like Aeon Flux, where they use the triangle, the all-seeing eye. People don't understand what that is. Again, read my book. But they use that as the actual insignia of the film, which Charlize Theron starred in. And there's many other examples I can use of films she's been involved in, which shows that she's absolutely part of the agenda. And part of that agenda is to make sure the status quo, which is in place, is maintained. And part of her role in doing that is in supporting the existing government. Now, that doesn't tell you just how pernicious this agenda really is, how far-reaching its influence goes. I don't know what will.
No, I know. But, these are things that I read this morning, and I've been reading about this letter to Ramaphosa. So the ANC is not reacting on the content of the letter, that they must deal with corruption and state capture. They are saying that these countries went direct to Ramaphosa. They didn't go through the correct channels. Therefore, they are hysteric, dramatic Western imperialistic forces. But so they don't care. The same as we were saying, they don't care about the ICC. They don't care, because they've done this for 25 years. The state capture, the corruption, the looting, the killing, the murders. They've been doing it for 25 years. So you 5 countries get together and send us a little letter after 25 years of us doing this. Should they care?
Yeah.
They don't care. The country's almost looted dry anyway. So a couple more years of ANC rule, there'll be nothing left to loot, and they don't care. They can then go to their house in Dubai and the French Riviera, wherever they've got their money and their land. Do they care? They don't care a little bit. Not a little bit. So if you're going to come and bomb our country because of what we did, we'll be gone. And it'll just be our people there. So, you know.
I do want to, again, just remind those who watch this that never underestimate just how much of what's going on in South Africa right now is by design, by forces who sit outside the country, that sit beyond the knowledge of mainstream media, because mainstream media don't talk about this level of control. Although terms like shadow government are becoming more into the public consciousness now, even into those who still watch mainstream media, they're beginning to understand these concepts. I think films that have been released like Snowden, the story of Edward Snowden, who is one of the people who's absolutely shown that there is a real schism between agencies such as the Central Intelligence Agency and legitimate people. There are corrupt elements that control governments, and actually they are the real terrorists because they are at war against the people. And yet we, the people, legitimize these organizations largely because we're brainwashed by things like James Bond, where we think these intelligence agencies benefit us and are on our side, yet we legitimize these governments by playing the game. And people say, well, what can we do, to change things? I go, well, first off, don't bloody vote, because you're playing into the political arena. You're giving energy to an illusion, okay? By saying by not voting, imagine everyone in America just decided, well, we know the political game's load of shite. We're not going to vote. It would send a huge message out to the world that the whole political scene is just an absolute charade. Because we all know that behind the scenes, there are people manipulating things, making deals, people making money changing hands, government contracts.
Even going vote, the guy could as well give his victory speech, because it's decided long before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They know exactly how it's going to play out because it's planned that way.
Yeah.
It's a pernicious system. And don't underestimate this, South Africa the way it is. It's by design.
Yes.
What we have to ask ourselves is, if it's by design, what is the end idea? What are they angling towards? And this is what people need to get to. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring South Africa to its knees so that it will accept any deal offered to them. Break us so far that when the Chinese come with, we've got this and we've got that, we just go, okay, yes, no, we'll agree. But they go, all right, fine, we will give you everything, but you have to bow down to our complete control regime. Now, don't underestimate just how many awards the United Nations gave the Chinese for their population control policies, when they were only allowed to have one child or end up in jail if they had a second. The UN praised the Chinese for that, and that's inhumane. That is absolutely inhumane. But they were praised for it by the UN. The way China have conducted themselves is actually, although some people go or human rights groups poo-poo it, don't underestimate behind the scenes just how much China is revered, and that it's bringing that control paradigm over to South Africa. And you'll go look in China at the moment. They are actively encouraging the RFID chip. Large amounts of people have already had them done. They do their shopping, they pay their bills, everything with this chip, which can be switched off if you step out of line. The ultimate control mechanism. And this is what's going to happen, is they're going to come over and they're going to go, all these black people that don't have homes, we don't know where to trace them. It's most of them don't pay taxes. Let's chip them. And these people who think they're fighting for their freedom are going to be even more enslaved for having support the stupid ideologies of this corrupt government.
I know, Mel, but I also feel, and I feel sorry for people in a way, we find the time or make the time to do research. But if you are working an 8-hour day, and then you come home and clean your house and make the supper and look after the kids and supervise the homework and get ready for work tomorrow and for school tomorrow and all of those good things, you sit and watch the news for half an hour and that's all you know about the world outside of you. That's all you know because you don't have time for anything different. You can't really blame those people for not having the knowledge, for not seeing the big picture. And if they're watching CNN or one of those, not CNN, if they're watching one of those, and that is the only view of the world they ever see, can you blame them for being a little bit, I can't say uninformed. There you go. I'm looking for a nice word. Uninformed. It's not their fault, Mel.
Well,
And they keep us, the powers that be, keep us in a state of such running to survive that you can't look at the big picture.
yeah.
You are so busy on that hamster wheel that rinse, repeat, and do it again tomorrow. It's kind of like that. So how can we even not blame, but look at these people and think, geez, you're uninformed. Shame. They're working so damn hard to put food on the table and look after the kids and keep their own lives running that they just don't have time to be informed.
I often say that one of the best things that ever happened to me was waking up. I was 33, probably the year that I woke up. And, that's a very symbolic number if you understand numerology. And for me, it was like a rebirth in a way. But I also say that this knowledge is such a burden because what it does is it puts me in a position where, I'm constantly buffeted by this wall of ignorance, even within my own family. And my dad is one of those people you talk about where, at 8 o'clock he sits down, he watches the news, and now he's going blind. He used to have the newspaper delivered to his house every morning and every night. And his view of the world was determined by what he watched on TV, what he read in the papers. And once said to him, you're a white South African. Do you trust your government? And he goes, no, of course not. Because would white South African trust the ANC government? I said, well, then why do you trust them? Why do you trust the media if you know that the government control the media?
Yeah.
And for a moment, I saw, the light go on, but he still watches the news.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I know what you're saying. These people should know better. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they're trapped in the little world and whatever else. I have become more of the belief as I have grown in my understanding of the world is that there is no longer any excuse to be ignorant of the truth because we have the tools at our fingertips through which to educate ourselves, right? Smartphones and all sorts. Okay, we have the tools at our fingertips to educate ourselves. The problem is that most people, and we did this little study with a group of people that we tried to look at creating humanitarian projects. And we go, okay, so let's say, for example, we could give something to everybody in the world to make their lives a little bit better. What would it be? Perhaps a laptop, because then they could educate themselves, learn to read, elevate themselves. And by the end of the study, the conclusion that we came to was that if we, for example, gave everybody €1 million or gave everybody a laptop or a smartphone, the vast majority, probably 90% of them at least, would use those smartphones for downloading music, watching videos, porn, gambling. They would not be looking at enlightening themselves, learning more, discovering how to become self-sustaining. They would use it because humanity is so ill-programmed. If we gave humanity, everybody $1 million, most of them would drink themselves to death, gamble it away, spend it on prostitutes, go stay in luxurious hotels, whereas a very small percentage would actually take that and build themselves a self-sustaining community.
Yes.
Yes. Right? So this is the problem we have, unfortunately, is that we have a world that has been so toxified by bad education and bad media that very few people even have what I would consider the general spiritual wherewithal to deal with the knowledge. Because the knowledge comes at such a burden that you have to have some level of spiritual evolution or have gone or attained some level of enlightenment to put this all into context without completely imploding on yourself.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's difficult to understand. It's difficult to get your head around.
Yeah.
If you as a searcher or someone just waking up don't understand your place in the universe and in the greater context of things, then taking on this kind of conspiratorial worldview can be completely it can make you suicidal.
Yeah, devastating, Mel, because
Devastating.
we are, the truth goes against everything that we believe is true. So you have to turn yourself into a pretzel to come to terms with this. And most, I understand why people wouldn't want to do that. They don't want to turn their lives upside down and everything they believed in upside down. So we'll just keep going along the way we did. We'll go along to get along because it's much easier than the alternative. And damn, don't I know that. Because I have pretzeled myself to such a degree that you just, I do untwist myself now. And I do not consider myself hugely enlightened or hugely clever or whatever. I know my subject. I know a little about a lot of things, but not a lot about a few things, so I can speak about most things, but I would not consider myself super intelligent or informed about them because there are only 24 hours in a day and I'm only a human being and so on, But in general, people just do not want to see their world turned on its head, so they walk away from it.
That's so true. And you would think you're doing them a favor by showing them the truth and teaching them the truth. And I've had to experience this with my closest members of my family, my mom and dad, the two people I'd really like to help the most because they're in South Africa.
Yes.
And yes. To acknowledge the stuff would turn their world upside down, and they don't want that. So that even though they understand now, after years of me explaining it to them where I'm coming from, they don't want to live in that paradigm. Whereas I am like you, I'm pretzel girl. And I don't even know what shape I was before I was pretzel. So even if I untangled myself, I don't even think I'd resemble what I was before I got tangled. It's a case of, I think, in a way, coming down this journey that we've been on, disseminating this information. It's a thankless job. We get a lot of abuse for it, and there's a lot of things that I've said in the media that have been taken and twisted out of context and used against me, misinterpreted. A lot of people who use us to build their own brand, their own celebrity, that they don't have honorable intentions. They masquerade in the very fine pseudo veneer of respectability and humanitarianism when they're anything but kind. Or honorable or ethical. And this is the unfortunate thing about being in the position that we are, is as good-hearted and as good-natured and as well-intended as we are with the work that we do. Unfortunately, being in media, it is a magnet for narcissists. And for whatever reason, when they spot people who have an appearance of intelligence or integrity, they believe that they can enhance their view of themselves through association with those people. And in the same time, all they do is create havoc for people like us because, it's, again, more shit for us to have to wade through and discern. Okay, is this legitimate? Does it have validation? Is there any reason we should put more energy into this? And often I more often than not have to do a 360 on a story or disassociate from somebody.
Yes.
And do it publicly. And the honest truth is, I have people coming out, wow, you've worked with a lot of shocking people. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I had to work that out for myself. And I've been brave enough to give them a platform and then to look into stuff and then to come out and say, okay, well, this is the problem. I've not just been like, oh, well, let's do these people if they do something wrong, turn a blind eye because I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm honest enough to come out and say, well, this is the issues. And, what people don't appreciate, and I use this analogy a lot, is that doing what we do, we have to wade through a lot of shit. Sometimes we get shit on us.
Yeah.
People be grateful to us for wading through that shit so they didn't have to. They judge us for having shit on us.
Exactly. Yeah? No, I absolutely agree with you there, Mel, because we have a platform and because we spread the word and because we are journalists does not mean we're not human and make mistakes.
Yes.
It does not mean that, but we admit to. We don't wait for someone to find our mistake. We find it ourselves and say, oops, listen, people, this was not so very kosher. Sorry. But, and even the ones that splatter on us may have a point somewhere along the line. So we've allowed them to make their point and turned around and said, okay, we made a mistake, but still this and this and this of what they had to say is relevant. So, you know, everybody has some relevance, even if they are shit stirrers. They have something to say that is relevant. And we gave them a platform to say it. We as journalists have a duty to not be far alt-right, far left, whatever. Give them all a platform. Let them all have their say, and we will sit as referees. And people must take from it whatever they think is good for them and leave the rest. You're muted.
So now I am open-minded, but I do have a disliking for people who are intolerant or small-minded, but even those who perhaps follow a small-minded ideology. I don't say, no, you're a this religion or you're a this believer. I don't want to hear from you. If I think that they have something that might be of relevance, and everybody has a small piece to the puzzle.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't matter, like perhaps it's even if it's one small piece is relevant and everything else that they're involved in to me isn't relevant and goes against perhaps what I believe in. I still believe in being open-minded as a journalist enough to look at everything for what it's worth, understand where the message comes from, and that, you know, it's not just about the message. The messenger has to be considered too.
Yes.
And then to put it through the various tests that give it gravity, you know, try to disprove it or try to see if this has some validation or whether it does contribute to the greater good or whether it just adds to the confusion.
Yes.
And that's how I try to process it. And you know, I can't always say I come to the correct conclusions because, like everybody else, I guess my heart sometimes gets in the way.
There you go.
You know, I care too much and I love too much, and sometimes people use me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally. And so we make mistakes. We're also human beings. But as you said, and as I said, everybody has a something to contribute.
Yes.
It may be mostly negative, but there will be that one little nugget in there that adds to the good story. And if we can just keep on finding those, eventually we'll have a whole mountain full of little nuggets and be able to do something good, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We're coming up to the last 5 minutes of the show. Karin, let's do media mentions. You've started up Radio Free South Africa again, I believe.
Yes, I have. I'm not running it myself because I can't make a commitment just yet. I've made one to you, but I can't commit to 2 Tuesday shows. That's 4 hours out of a Tuesday. I can't do it. So it's being run for me, but it's on Resolution Radio, Blog Talk Radio, on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. And there's this show, and please forgive me, my webpage, radiofreesouthafrica.com, has been sadly neglected, but I have had some family worries and some personal problems. I promise faithfully I'm getting back to it. My YouTube channel has also been neglected. I have made a resolution, not a New Year's resolution, just a me resolution, that I'm going to get it up and running again. And this seems like the time to do it. So I don't think it was neglected. I've given up on it. RadioFreeSouthAfrica.com and Radio Free South Africa on YouTube.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karin. Okay, just a bit about what's going on with our media. StopSouthAfricanGenocide.org is still up. I have been scarce with the articles over the last year, but they will be coming more regularly. It is now a membership site. It is a free membership site. We've turned it into a membership site simply because we got spammed by Russian hackers and had all sorts of funny things happening. And so it's a free membership. Join up. I don't send out too many newsletters, so I won't stuff up your inbox too much with unnecessary rubbish. So yeah, that's still there. It's still going. And of course, this show and all of the stuff that we do is posted on ccn.media, which holds the archives for Conscious Consumer Network. Dragonology.info is still running with all of my Dragonology work. And of course, I've just released a book called The Greatest Discovery. And it really does focus on a very interesting part of Southern Africa, bringing light to an ancient civilization that once lived there, a pre-Diluvian civilization, and there's evidence of the oldest ritual worship site having existed there, as well as the oldest evidence of agriculture that has yet to be discovered. So it's a very exciting find if you understand that this is the oldest and largest civilization to have yet been identified, and it's quite literally the greatest discovery anthropologically as well as archaeologically. So that book's available at thegreatestdiscovery.world for 25 euros. Please support our work by downloading a copy. And of course, please support independent media. People like Karin and I have to sacrifice a lot to talk logically, bring information to you, and try and make sense of some of the chaos. All we ask is that you share our message, correspond with us if you have any questions, but please do respectfully. Karin and myself are very approachable, and we would love to speak to anybody who has something of interest to share. So feel free to get in touch with us, either one of us through our Facebook pages, or contact me through info@consciousconsumernetwork.tv. And I think that's it for tonight. Karin, anything else before we go?
No, I think we've covered an enormous amount of subjects today. We'll be back next week and amuse you some more.
Fabulous. It's great to be back. You know, we work so well together, and we're certainly going to be dealing with the South African issue going forward this year, and looking forward to tackling it a bit harder. But for tonight, that's us done. So for those of you who've tuned in, thank you so much, and we look forward to speaking to you guys again. Take care then. Bye-bye. Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination. You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.